My name's Ron Kim, and in this video, I'm going to answer a question I got from Pierre. Pierre asked, how do you move your crosshair around the map? And there's 4 different ways to do it, and I'll show you all those methods, why and when you should use it, as well as examples of Yayster or El Diablo, the Valorant professional, definitely one of the most mechanically gifted players, and show you how he uses these methods in his gameplay. Alright, so the first method of moving your crosshair around the map is what I call smoothing. And that's being able to put your crosshair right at the edge of the wall and smoothly bend your wrist and then keeping your crosshair at the newly revealed angle. So it's a combination of using my strafe keys, smoothly bending my wrist, and then that way my crosshair is ready to shoot when I see someone. So what I'll do here is if I'm smoothing around this right side, I'll reach my maximum wrist bend. I can't bend anymore. And then yes, I do have to lift it up. And depending on how much you want to smooth, if you expect to smooth like, another full wrist bend, then you definitely want to go all the way back to the left. And now it gives me all that space so I can smooth again. Some people like to do it to the center of their wrist bend. So for example, if I'm bending to the left right here, they'll go back to their center position and then they'll smooth again. So as you're watching these pro players play, you'll see them smooth, lift it up, and then create more space. And they're doing this really fast because you want your mouse on the mouse pad so you're able to move it, right? So it's a smooth bending wrist, lift up, recenter, and then I'm smoothing like this. If you have low sensitivity, obviously you're going to have to be faster and you're going to have to do more resets of lifting and then dropping the mouse. If you have high sensitivity, you have higher range of motion, so that's kind of an advantage there for high sense people. If you use your arm, then you have a lot of smoothing space. So if I use my arm here, I can actually retain my wrist bend, and then if I see someone, then I have my full left and right wrist bend because I didn't use my wrist. So again, I'll use my arm here and I'm retaining my wrist bend, and then it gives me this wide range of motion to be able to smooth. So that's another advantage of using your arm for this smoothing situation. So I'll play a couple of clips here from Ye and show you examples of smoothing. So when do you need to use smoothing and when should you not? So it's definitely situational, but in general, you want to smooth when you need to advance forward quickly and take ground. So say if I'm taking this site here and I need to beat the rotations, well, I need to constantly be taking ground and moving forward. So this means pressing my W key, but my crosshair is still ready in position, ready to shoot. The 4th level, which I'll get into later, but I'll just explain now to give some context, is if you have time, like say you have a lot of time on the clock, it's still 5 on 5, you definitely want to either jiggle peek these angles like this, or you want to strafe stop like this. So another situation you want to use smoothing besides just advancing forward quickly is for transition angles. Let's say for like right here, it's not likely that they're going to be in this position. So we don't need to like jiggle peek it. I mean, most people aren't going to sit here. So we're just going to go ahead and smooth it so we can save some time. And then we're going to smooth these angles. And then right here, you might want to jiggle peek here. This is a common spot. I would smooth these angles right here. Most likely they're not going to be there. Like this angle right here, there's probably not someone sitting here in an off angle, so I'll smooth it. But when I get to this point right here, high likely chance that someone can be in this position right here. So this is where I want to jiggle peek or strafe stop. So the second method of moving your crosshair on the map is flicking and recentering. So a lot of people you'll see as they're moving around, you see this kind of jittery movement. And what they're doing is that see my mouse right here, it's kind of flicking and then I'm recentering it. I'm flicking, lifting and recentering and creating space. And what they're doing is they want to keep within their neutral wrist bend. So right here is my neutral wrist, right? It's not bent, it's right in the middle. It's not bent left or right. So what they'll do is flick it a little bit, reset, and then they're staying in the center because for most people, you're most accurate around your neutral position compared to most people aren't as accurate when they're kind of jammed or at their in range of motion with their wrists. So as they're moving around, This isn't game accurate. Like most people aren't going to peek angles like this, but let me just show you. They'll just move around and then you'll see them lifting and flicking, and they're just constantly creating space like this. I'm over exaggerating, but this is the second way to do it. So if you have low sensitivity, generally this is what people are going to use because they want to retain some of their wrist bend like this. Even high sense players do this. So they'll just, lift and recenter, and you want to do it as quickly as possible, right? The more your mouse is off the mouse pad, the more the mouse is not ready to move. So you need to be able to quickly flick, retain your wrist bend, stay in your neutral position, and then lift it, land it, and then keep it recentered. So when should you use this method and when should you not? Again, I would say if you're a low sense player, this is something you have to be good at so you don't run out of wrist bend. But also you want to do it in transition periods where there's probably not someone going to be there. So what you're doing is you're flicking, recentering, and then you're preparing yourself for the flick where you really think that there's someone's going to be there. All right, the third method of moving the crosshair on the map is jiggle peeking. So this definitely applies to games like Counter-Strike and Valorant where there's penalty to your accuracy while moving. And it's one of those things where if you have time, jiggle peeking is a great way to unravel these angles and then have your crosshair ready to shoot. So you could see here I'm strafing left and then I'm strafing right behind the wall, and I'm giving myself just line of sight in case someone is there. And this is great for snipers because it can bait out shots. And this is also a great way to peek without committing. So if I just wide swing, if someone's here, then I have no cover. So if I'm jiggle peeking, I'm providing line of sight, and it's also a great way to isolate fights. So I'll play a clip here showing Ye doing a great example of jiggle peeking, isolating one-on-one fights, and then giving himself line of sight so he can get a shot off. All right, so the fourth way of moving your crosshair on the map is strafe stopping. So this one definitely takes the longest amount of time, but it's the one that is the most accurate because you are for sure stopped and you're not going to get that penalty to accuracy, but it also takes the longest amount of time. So if you have time, you definitely want to strafe stop if you can. And what I'm doing is just dissecting these angles one by one, and my crosshair is at the right place, ready to shoot at the right time. So again, if you have time and you can kind of dissect these angles like this, then you should do it. If you find this content helpful, I have a FPS coach community available for only $20. It has 70 videos with custom training drills like the one you see here to help with your aim and your movement, as well as weekly group training sessions with me. All right, so now I want to show you examples of combining all of these because some angles and some situations require different methods of moving the crosshair around the map. So one of those variables are distance. So for example, if I'm peeking this C long here, this is an angle I'm going to smooth, but then when I get to this point, there's a high chance that someone could be up here, maybe over here. So this is where I want to jiggle peek because this is a long range distance position that snipers like to be. So I definitely don't want to smooth out like this and then expose myself to multiple angles. I either want to say if I have a sniper, I can strafe stop and then I can pick this person off. Or if I have a rifle, I could peek like this just enough where I can see line of sight and I know it's safe. If that's safe, I can jiggle peek the next one, and then I can jiggle peek the next spot right here, and then this is a potential danger spot because it could be up on top or they could be on bottom. So this is where you have to be really clean with your jiggle peeks. If you go out a little too far, obviously I'm exposed to two spots, so you just want to go just enough, right? So this is a position where I would jiggle peek, and then say if I'm moving up, See if I jiggle peek and I clear all these angles. Now I'm going to smooth these angles. I might want to counter strafe stop here, but probably not a position I need to dedicate all that time. So I'll smooth this. And then as I'm transitioning, there could be someone here, right? So I need to re-clear. I'll jiggle peek. I'll smooth this. And then right here, I definitely want to counter strafe stop. So right there, my crosshair was a little off. The aiming point I wanted to be was like right here. So as I come here, I'm smoothing. And then there could be someone right here close. So I want to counter strafe stop. Have my crosshair at headshot position. These positions I'll smooth. And then as I'm moving up here, I'm smoothing everything, just kind of moving up. And then I get to this point and it's kind of dangerous, right? So here, this is where you would execute smokes and nades and stuff. But let's say if I have to dry peek it, I'm going to come up here. I'm probably going to not dedicate peeking out like this. I would counter strafe stop this, but I'm exposed to all these angles here, which is more dangerous and more chance that they're going to be here. So before committing to this angle, I'll come over here. I'll jiggle peek on this, jiggle peek this, jiggle peek, jiggle peek, jiggle peek. And then I get to this point, and now I can counter strafe stop this spot, move over here. See, I'm exposed to here, but I'm more worried about this angle than this angle. So then I'll put my back against the wall to create some space. And then here, I'll just jiggle peek. There could be someone right here, so I'll counter strafe stop. And then I'll smooth probably these angles right here to get to this spot. So as you can see here, it really depends on kind of the angle and the positions that they're most likely in. And it's a combination of using these different techniques of how to move your crosshair on the map, depending on the position and the distance. So I'll show you one more example here. Let's say if I'm clearing this spot over here. So let's say if I already have this position and I don't need to worry about these angles. Well, let's pretend. Let's say we're rotating late. So I want to come over here, clear this spot. I'll smooth these angles, and then I'll jiggle peek this for sure, because this is a spot that a lot of people like to spot. Jiggle peek, probably smooth these angles, jiggle peek this a little bit. And then now this is a position where you have to kind of guess, unless you have utility that you want to use. But let's say, I'll jiggle peek that. If there's no one there, then I can quickly do a 180. So I'll do something like this. This is not, in a crossfire, I don't want to smooth out and it be totally exposed to this. So this would be a great example of jiggle peeking, clearing that, and then quickly coming around to clear this 180 spot. Then I'll smooth these angles, most likely not in a weird off angle that someone's going to sit here. And then as I get to this angle, I can either counter strafe stop or I can jiggle peek like this just to get info. I'll smooth, and then I get up to this point, I could be exposed to this spot right here. So I will jiggle peek this, and then next spot is this sight box right here. I'll smooth that, or I can counter strafe stop. But here I'll probably just smooth. And then up here, as this is clear, I'll probably smooth these angles. And then right here, I actually overexpose myself. For here, I would jiggle peek or counter strafe stop. And then over here, I would definitely counter strafe stop for this position. And then again, it's one of those positions where I'm exposed here. So actually, I skipped the angle. So I would have actually gone over here, counter strafe stopped, and then I can take my time, go all the way back here, counter strafe stop, and so forth. So like I said, it's a combination. It really depends on what positions that the enemies can be in, and then how much time you have. If I just don't have much time, I'm just gonna have to smooth everything like this. So move up, smooth. Definitely counter strafe stop here because it's the only position they can be in. I'll smooth, counter strafe stop, smooth, counter strafe stop. If I want to continue going, I'll smooth, counter strafe stop, because they could be here. I'll smooth it. So yeah, it's just a combination of all four of these methods. Again, it really depends on the distance that the enemy is going to be. It's how much time you have. If you have all the time in the world, you want to jiggle peek everything or counter strafe stop. If you don't have time, you want to do the flicking and recentering like this and just move up quickly, or you want to smooth it. And it also depends on your sense. So hopefully this video was helpful. I know I went over a lot, but in general, you want to master these 4 different methods of peeking and moving your crosshair around the map. If this video was helpful, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to stay up to date.